So, good evening, New Jerusalem. Those of you who are watching on this Monday afternoon, this is Timothy Wright again with mental health awareness, along with my cousin, who is a mental health educator, Quintera Wright. Quintera, won't you tell us hello again?
Hello, everyone. I am Quintera Wright, and I am happy to be with you guys again tonight.
Wonderful. So, how your weekend been going?
It has been good. It's been busy, but it's been a good weekend.
Awesome. So last week we kind of left off talking about stress, and that's one of the things we want to kind of pick it back. Just Quintera, if you don't mind, just giving us a recap on just stress in general, and then we'll move into our next what we really want to talk about on tonight.
Okay.
First of all, we want to thank those who are joining us via Facebook and YouTube. Go ahead now and hit like and share. If you're watching from Facebook, hey, thank you. We've been getting so many comments, Quintera, about how needed this has been. So if you are watching from Facebook, hit like and share. Share this with your friends. Share this with your family. Again, we said this last week, it may possibly save someone's life. And then, hey, my YouTube viewers, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel and get the notification when we come up every Monday at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, of course. So we're grateful for you. So again, y'all, we have been talking about stress on last week. And Quintera, she's going to bring us in on that. Just give us an overview on what we talked about on last week. Then we're going to go into what we really want to discuss with you on tonight.
So we're just going to recap again, just to kind of talk about stress. And stress is pretty much, pressure or tension that one may put on themselves from a circumstance or an experience. And so we all, like I said before, have experienced stress before on one level or another, whether that was something very small or something very major. And so something very small can look like, I didn't make it to a certain event on time. And so now I'm a little stressed, I'm a little overwhelmed, versus something major or something stressful, like maybe I just got terminated from my job, or even my power just got disconnected. So that could be some major stressors that someone can have in their life versus someone not making it to an event on time. So those are some stressors. Stressors can be good, stress can be bad, but it's just depending on how that affects you and how quickly you're able to kind of combat that stress that you're experiencing.
So really, it's a matter of us managing our stress.
Stress management, yep.
Yeah. So again, I was telling you that we were taking a couple of weeks off from the pulpit, and yesterday I went back. And I felt so relaxed, so comfortable again. And I didn't realize how stressed I was. And just to get away from what I love, to just refresh and rejuvenate meant a lot to me. And New Jerusalem, thank you for allowing me to do that, that I can be a better servant to you as well. So Quintera, one of the things, and we want to put this censor out here in some form or fashion to let you know that what we're about to deal with might be very sensitive to some people, and we know it is. But we really want to talk about suicide, and one reason you and I, we got together on this, and we call ourselves carefully trying to put this together. Because people might get offended when we're talking about this is a touchy subject, but yet it's a needed subject. And one reason, Quintera, is the fact that we're seeing it so much more in our Black community. So we want to deal with suicide, and just for instance, we've been seeing it with Miss USA. Committing suicide. Regina Hall's son committed suicide. Even right here in the state of Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, a young lady leaves her classroom, walks on I-55 and jumps. You got the incident in Memphis, Tennessee, the same type of situation. Young man on I-40, and he jumps to his death. We're seeing it so much in our Black community, and it needs to be addressed. And I know it might be the elephant in the room, but we still have to address it. So one thing I want to do first, let's look at. Can we do the statistics? Let's look at some statistics. Then I want to read this letter from a young. We hadn't even said nothing about her yet, but there was a young lady who was enrolled at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who committed suicide. And once we do the statistics, we want to read her letter to you, and we'll look at that some more. Or do we need to read it now or do the statistics? What we need to do?
So we can just kind of give some information on kind of suicide and how prevalent, it is becoming. Like you said before, it is a very sensitive conversation. And so sometimes when you talk about suicide, it can be very triggering to someone who may have some trauma that they're dealing with and dealing with life stressors. And so we're very sensitive to that. And right now we just want to try to put some facts out there. Right. So suicide in the United States is one of the 10th leading cause of death. And that's pretty high, on the list of causes of death. And you're going to be probably amazed about in the state of Mississippi, it is the 3rd leading cause of death.
Wow. So they're probably number 1 is probably COVID now, or then cancer. And so when you think about suicide, you would think that's way ranked real low. But unfortunately, it's ranked real high. And then that's also another need for us to discuss and look at facts, because we're seeing, again, in the state of Mississippi alone, and even in the United States, it's 10. And right here in our state, roughly almost 3 million people in the whole state of Mississippi. And it's the 3rd leading cause of death, y'all. So it is definitely the elephant in the room, and it needs to be discussed.
Most definitely. Of course, me being in public health, I love to research data. And so even just looking at that, that's a pretty high on the list. When you think about causes or reasons, causes of death, with suicide being 1 of 3, we do know that, like you said, cancer is one of those, cardiovascular disease is another, and even obesity. Those are some really top ones that, nationwide that individuals struggle with. But with number 3 in the state of Mississippi, you're like, oh my goodness, this is a major concern. And the population for usually individuals who actually commit suicide is that age group from 14 to 24. So those are your young teenagers from teenage to young adults, and so you think about, your cousins, or you think about your nieces or your nephews, or even your own biological children or church members, and you're like 14 to 24, that age group. That age group is so vulnerable, to so many different things. They're influenced by so many different people and, from social media or however, but that's a vulnerable age group. And so, although that there is 14 to 24, there are, of course, age ranges from even younger to even older. So just because we talk about 14 to 24, there's a spectrum of people who actually consider or think about, act out, the decision to commit suicide.
So that 14 to 24, again, I think that's important for us to look at as well, because again, the brain has not fully developed, and there's a lot of things that is being processed as well. So that's a statistic just in general, just to look at that people 14.
14, that's young. That's super young.
14. Yeah. Do we need to read this letter?
Um, Kind of before we hit on that, then also just kind of want to put out there that actually, to every one person that actually commits suicide, there has been at least 25 attempts.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's been multiple attempts, and sometimes for individuals, before they even get to the point of suicide, they've done maybe small things like superficial cuts, or maybe ingested different um, chemicals or foods or pills or however. Um, so there are so many different alternatives before someone actually gets the decision to end their life. Usually there's 4 and 5 people who die of suicides that are males. There's 3 and 4 that are females. And on an average, there's 121 people per day who die because of suicide.
Right. I think it's somewhere in the statistics, it also talks about is more prevalent in male.
Yes. It's more prevalent, causes of death in males versus females, and it's usually like a 3 to 4 then to a 1 ratio when it comes to males to female suicidal rates, and it's more prevalent in Caucasian or white males versus African American males. But it is concerning because we are starting to see more of an increase in the number of the population and those who are wanting to commit suicide or thinking about or feel like they have to commit suicide in the Black community.
Right. So let's look at that right quick, because I'm interested in knowing what could be some of the reasons that is more prevalent in male than female.
There are a couple of different reasons, that individuals feel that they need to end their life or want to end their life. And a lot of times it's from individuals who suffer from depression. Mm-hmm. Number one, that's like the top of the charts. And then anxiety. Mm-hmm. And then also have individuals who may have had some childhood trauma, some PTSD. Those are some things that we talked about early on before. Those are some of the common illnesses or challenges that individuals suffer from that feel like that there's no way out.
Absolutely. And I'm processing all of this, and I'm getting emotional just to think about someone wanting to take their life, and when there's so much in life to offer. We were talking about this young lady at Southern University in Baton Rouge who was a cheerleader, and a lot of times we think, looking at somebody, we think they would have it together. And, and we always say, hey, check on people we know that might not be okay. But just from reading her letter, just listening to some of the conversations about this, not only do we need to check on folks who we think are not okay, but we really need to check on people who we think are okay. Mm-hmm. The reality is, it might be that this very person who you think is okay is actually not okay.
Yeah, most definitely. There's so much pressure, and we kind of talk about it's not okay. It's okay to not be okay, right. And it's okay. And the best thing when it comes to suicide, when it comes to dealing with depression, is, finding one trusted individual, at least one, a family or friend where you can talk to about the different things that you're going through. Vicarious trauma, that is real. Vicarious trauma is basically when a person is processing change or results from empathetic engagement. And so that's when a person picks up on someone else's trauma or somebody else's feelings. And so a lot of times these are our caregivers, these are our teachers, these are our pastors, right? They're picking up the emotions and the feelings of other people because they care for them. And so it comes from a place of empathy. And so it's like, I hurt because you hurt. I'm sad because you're sad. I'm confused because you're confused. And so we pick up those feelings of empathy. And sometimes when we are overly engaged in empathy versus being sympathetic, then sometimes it affects us mentally and physically.
So in this letter, it says, may this day bring me rest and peace. I've fought this urge since my early teenage years. I gave this life all the fight I had. To everyone who has entered my life, I'm so grateful, and I can only imagine how this may find you. I have been surrounded by people who may have honestly thought that I was okay. But I haven't been okay for a while. I struggled so much through this year alone, from COVID to tearing my ACL, to nearly failing all my classes. To the people in my life, I pray you learn to vocalize your feelings and to get help always. I failed at this, and I'm afraid it's too late. And then she goes on to say something to her mom. Mom, thank you so much. I pray you know I'm at rest now. You've given me anything to see me happy. You would give me anything to see me happy. You have given me everything to see me happy. I'm happy in the water where everything is still and peaceful. I have written so many suicide notes in my life, but finally I reached my end. I hope this teaches everyone to check on your strong friends, be present always. And contradicting myself, but never give up. I know that I'm letting a lot of people down by what I'm about to do. But truth is, I've already let down so many people throughout my life, and it just feels unbearable. I've lost my connection to God. The devil seems to have won, and that's okay. I blame no one for this. I thank everyone for all they have done, and I'm sorry. I am so sorry. But thinking about how everyone else will feel about my death is not enough either. I've tried to please and make everyone else happy my entire life. I've been dead inside for too long. To everyone I love, just remember that this is not your fault, and I pray you don't find guilt in my situation. To my granddad, I wish you were here to tell me I've been stupid and to tell me it's not worth it, but you left me and found your own peace. I've always been stubborn and prideful just like you. I've always dreamed of becoming so many things that I am today, but they just aren't enough. I'm not enough. I haven't felt enough for a while. But I say all of this, I'm done fighting. My battle is over. And I pray everyone finds peace in that. And when I got this news, I could have thought of my own daughter, my own son, or any of my family members that we're thinking that they are okay when they're not okay. And even now, Quintera, I've come to this conclusion. Even at church now, I occasionally ask people, "Are you okay?" I ask my children that. I ask my wife that, because you mentioned how stress is passed on because you are a caregiver. And my wife, those of you who don't know, she is a nurse practitioner, and it would behoove me for her to come just to come to this point where she's thinking about doing such thing. So my question to you, and we're going to come back to this letter, but my question to you, what triggers suicide? And I know that's a broad question, but I want you to tackle that in any way you can, because again, we want the facts. Again, this is sensitive, and we understand how sensitive it is. But again, we're going to pause. Let's do this, Quintera. Let's pause again for station identification. If you're watching on Facebook, again, follow us on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Again, Quintera, here is the question. Again, I know it's broad, and we're gonna try to tackle it the best way possible, because we know, again, there are some people who are watching who might say, "Hey, this is just too much." But again, it's an elephant in the room, and it needs to be addressed. What triggers suicide?
Um, it's complex, you know what I
Yes,
mean?
I'm sure it
And
is.
it is, and I before we kind of dig in, because that is pretty heavy, I definitely want to send my condolences to that family.
Amen.
Um, it is an article that I read and I seen, and I was like, oh wow, um, my condolence and prayers go to that family for sure. But when it comes to, what are some of the things that trigger suicide, there's so many different factors, right? And a lot of times those lead from stress, it leads from depression, sometimes traumas that we haven't healed from. It can be a sense of feeling out of control. There are so many different things that can make us feel like we're out of control and really affect our day to day. So some of the risk factors that are associated with suicide can be, poor job performance, right? Like I'm not performing well on my job, and I'm fear of having a fear that I could potentially, be terminated. It could be feeling passed over from a promotion, or career opportunity, rejection or failure. That's a big one. None of us like to be rejected. None of us like to feel like we failed at something, deliberately, like a sickness or an illness. Sometimes even just learning about a new diagnosis or having to, live with a condition that we don't foresee ourselves getting past or getting over or being healed from, that can be tough. Imagine, I've heard people before, who say like, I had a stroke and I lost my mobility. I can no longer care for myself. Like somebody has to care for me, or people don't understand what I'm saying because my speech is slurred or this or that. Like their whole life just changed, literally in a matter of a situation, from a car crash or however. There's so many things that affects, people's life, and it could be death of a loved one, grief. Some people grieve themselves to death. you know um Bullying. We kind of talked about bullying and kind of what that looks like, but bullying is real, and even cyberbullying. you know um Financial problems. Finance is a stressor. you know Financial, not knowing how you're going to pay your bills, worrying if you're going to get evicted from your home. How am I going to take care of my family? Those are, true struggles that individuals sometimes don't feel like they're able to, surpass that. And so some of the, warning signs that kind of come with suicidal thoughts, are, or intrusive thoughts, as we would say, are some the ideations, the ideal of suicide. Sometimes individuals go to substance abuse, like they start using substances, whether that's alcohol or drug use, and then that feeling of purpose, that loss of purpose. So seeing no reason to live, anxiety, anxious, agitated, having nightmares, that PTSD, having nightmares and different things like that, feeling trapped. Some individuals say, I see no way out of this. I'm in this situation, whether I put myself in it or not, I see no exit. And then hopelessness, is what's the point, that feeling of hopeless, not being hopeful in a situation and feeling like there's no need to live anymore. So there's so many different factors that comes into why a person may consider suicide. That's just a few. That's not just all of it, but there's just a few to kind of name some of the risk factors that individuals may have when it comes to even thinking about suicide.
Right. And like I said, again, this is that's a broad question, and I know it is. But then let's look at the fact that, we got that 14 to 24 age group, and they grew up with technology. They grew up with social media. And the question becomes like, what factor does social media play? because we're seeing, I mean, everything is at our fingertip. And while we're doing this, I'm looking up information while you are talking. People are calling me while we're having this conversation. So everything is right at our fingertips. So I know social media has something to play, because I'm looking at the fact that once a school went from dressing like you want to, but they can't say, hey, we need a uniform, because it released the stress of the children, because there's some children who are not fortunate as others to buy the designer and stuff like that. And that becomes a problem. And then you talked about cyberbullying. And not only that, but then right there at the school as well, because we're seeing a lot of children who in ages 14 to 18, really, who have just gave up. So what part does social media play? What's factors in with this?
Social media can be tough. Having quick access, these phones give us quick phones, iPads, iPods, having these different tablets and different devices, give us quick access to anything we want.
Mm-hmm.
You have, TikTok, you have Snapchat, you have Instagram, you have Twitter. There's so many different social media platforms that almost anybody can have access to at almost any age.
Right.
There's so much pressure when it comes to TikTok, especially when it hits that generation of that 14 to 24, where the individual is still trying to identify who they are, as a person or as an individual. There's this pressure of somebody's lifestyle may be better than mine, or I want to be this person, or I've went to school for this and I should have this by now. There's an expectation. I feel like social media creates an expectation of what your life should look like versus the reality of what your life really is, right? The grass is always greener somewhere else, And so social media just I feel like puts so much pressure on individuals, because you can look at somebody's lifestyle in a picture or through glimpse of pictures, and it looks like that person is fabulous, right? You look at any celebrity, right? You go look at their celebrity, you look at the lifestyle, they're going on trips, they got money, they got the best of everything, right? And then you have someone who don't have that, don't have the money, don't have the lifestyle, don't have access to all these different resources. And they're like, dang, we're the same age. We lived in the same city, and I don't have those things. I don't live like this person. And so I feel like there's so much pressure to be something or be someone who you're not, sometimes. And so I feel like you can feel like your life can be going great, and then you look on social media and you're like, what am I missing on? So I feel like for that age group, especially because they're at that point of trying to identify their own self, and trying to figure out what it is that they want and they need in their life, sometimes social media takes that away from them. And so I'm very cautious about social media and kind of how individuals interact with social media, because then you got people who put all of their information on there. You got some people who don't put any information on there. So it's very tricky. And then even when you look into these different video games from, the PS5 and the Nintendo 64, you got all these different Xbox, the Wii, all these different games that people have access to. And sometimes they're not the best for our children. You know what I mean? A lot of times parents don't know about some of the things that children have access to when they're on these video games. I talk about this all the time, where, you got Grand Theft Auto, you got these Fortnites, you got all these games that are either related to stealing or, crime or gang or whatever, you know what I mean? And so you have individuals, imagine you have individuals who spend about 6 to 8 hours on their phone, like it's a job.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Even you have individuals in school and they're still on their phones. So imagine if you're on your phone 8 hours a day and all you're doing is looking at violence. You're looking at, all these different things that are going on around your community and you're engaging in it. And so sometimes you pick up on characteristics or you pick up on certain things, not intentionally, but because you've seen it so much that sometimes you pick up the identity of that character.
Mm.
And so, sometimes we see some of these things where individuals who play, these violent games all day, imagine playing it for 4 to 6 to 8 hours, and then they go, they turn the game off, and then that's all they're thinking about, right? I need access to a gun. I need access to a car. I need to live this lifestyle because these video games say this is what I should have, And so it plays, all of these different things plays a factor. And even when it comes to cyberbullying, like I'm big on cyberbullying because you have individuals who's on their phones 24/7, right? A lot of people lose that social skill, when we was younger, we was outside playing, riding bikes, hanging out with friends, versus you have children now who don't go outside. They don't hang out with friends. They don't even know how to build relationships with people. So they build relationships through social media. They build relationships through these video games and through different apps, and so sometimes, individuals don't have the best intent when they're on social media. They don't have the best intent when they're trying to connect and create, friendships through other people, because you can hide who you are behind a screen. Nobody have to know who you are when you set your hashtag name is this and that. You can portray to be, 15 years old and you're 33. So there's so many different things that come to, people have access to that are not the healthiest choice for them, and so like, even when I talked about the video games, I was like, Grand Theft Auto, I learned about this because I was, work with kids all the time, but even in Grand Theft Auto, like children have access to pornography.
Wow.
There are strippers on these video games and different things. I was like, what? Until I actually seen it, and I was like, oh, that's true. So like a lot of times, a lot of even parents, they buy these games for children, but they don't know what's actually on here. They don't know who their children are talking to and communicating to. And you have individuals who go on here with the intention of building unhealthy relationships with other people. Cyberbullying, when it comes back to cyberbullying, and there's this little girl who committed suicide. And she was about 10, 11 years old, lived in Columbus, and it was very familiar to me because I went to school in Columbus at the W, and when I found out, I was just like in tears. I bawled out. There was this girl, she was being bullied, via, cyber bullying, and then she would go to school, she would be bullied at school physically and, emotionally. And she eventually one day took her life, and her mother never knew. Wow. She never knew that her daughter was being bullied at school or online, because she never communicated that. So imagine you dropping your daughter off to school, right, with the intentions that, oh, she's going to come back home, and then you get home to find your daughter not alive. That's tough.
Right.
Because that communication wasn't there.
Right. Then again, I think it's important, and I'm seeing this now, how important communicating with our children are. We have to definitely communicate with our children. Mary and Justin, if those of you don't know, Mary is my daughter. She's 18. My son is 20, Justin. and they take on different personality. Where Justin talks more than Mary. Mary is the type of person you definitely just have to you ask questions and you're just going to get a direct answer. And Tara, I still ask those questions. Are you okay? Because I'm seeing it so much again in our community. Are you okay? And it's okay to say you're not okay. So I've been there where I have to say, you know what, I'm not okay. I need a break. Again, we know this is, those of you who are watching again, we know this is sensitive because you might have a family member who might be going through or have done this or gone through. And we want to be here for you to let you know this is not just, we're giving you the facts so you can, because let's be honest, this is what suicide looks like. It looks like Timothy Wright. It looks like Quintera Wright. It could look like anybody. Just because we think things are going good. Yes, we might be having a good life and doing this and that, but then our mental wellness is so important because we can make it look like anything. I can make myself look like anything I want to. I can sell myself any kind of way I want to, but at the end of the day, who are you really? And I think that's one of the things we need to look at. So Quintera, let's do this. Let's look at, because there are some myths about suicide. Right. There are some facts about suicide. So we need to look at the myths and facts about suicide. So you, the expert, you have the floor.
And just to kind of piggyback on what you said when you said that, are you okay? You know, a lot of times people say that as a greeting. Hey, how are you? You know, and sometimes it just naturally comes out of their mouth. Oh, I'm good. I'm okay. You know, and, you know, even I have found myself doing that before where, you know, someone say like, are you, you know, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. Knowing I'm upset because somebody made me upset, you know? So I think like sometimes we really have to check ourselves for real and just be honest with ourselves. Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated, you know? But it's learning, you know, okay, I am upset. And then now what I'm going to do about it.
Because you don't want to get to a point where you got a gun to your head deciding what you're going to do with that gun, or you got a bottle of pills, you deciding what you're going to do with those bottle of pills, or a razor. You know, I mean, this is real. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Again, I didn't want to get to a point where I lost it, you know, because I was looking at the fact that I have a wife, I have children, I have, you know, I pastor a church. People are depending on me. But then again, I had to step away to be refreshed. So again, let's talk about some myths and some facts about suicide.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about it. So one of them is people who talk about suicide won't really do it, right? You hear people say, oh, they won't do it. If they talk about it, they're not going to do anything, right? So the fact is almost everyone who attempts suicide has given some clue or warning before. You know, we say don't ignore, you know, anything that's indirect or directly referenced to death or suicide. Statements like you'll be sorry when I'm gone, or I can't see any way out. No matter how casual or how jokingly the conversation is, you have to take every situation as if it is serious. You know, a lot of times, you know, I've heard before, oh, they're just seeking attention. That's not trauma-informed work. You know, whether they're seeking attention or not, it was a cry for help. You know, and we have to take it like that, and we have to do whatever we can that's in their best interest to help them as much as possible. Right. Anyone who tries to kill himself or herself must be crazy. You know, nobody's crazy. You know, you never know what someone's struggles are. You never know what their lifestyle has ever been. You know, There's this kiddo who I have been working with, and he's young. He's a teenager, and he has siblings. And for many years, he has been caring for his siblings. So he's parentified. You know, mother works third shift, works lots of hours, and she would work. She'd come home. She'd stay up long enough to make sure her oldest son was up. And then he will make sure that the siblings were okay. He made sure they was off to school, made sure they were stressed, make sure they was fed. But that's a lot of responsibility for a 15-year-old, And then he has to go to school. And then he has to come home, make sure they are home from school, make sure they have food to eat. That is a lot for a child to have to go through. And for a child who say, like, I don't want to be here no more because I've taken on this responsibility that's not mine. You're not crazy. That's heavy. That's not heavy. I mean, that's heavy. I'm sorry. Most suicidal people are not psychotic or insane. They must be upset, grief-stricken, depressed, or despairing, but extreme distress and emotional pain are not necessarily signs of mental illness.
That's interesting. That is
if a person is determined to kill himself or herself, nothing is going to stop them. Like, you hear that, they're going to kill themselves, they're going to do it anyways. You can't stop them, That's not necessarily true. You know what I mean? It's not that a person wants to kill themselves. It's not that they want to no longer be here, because they do. They just want to figure out a way to best cope with whatever stress that they may have, or figure out an exit plan, or figure out a new way to live life despite the things that they've been through. Right. So even in the most severely depressed person has mixed feelings about death, wavering until the very last moment between wanting to live and wanting to die. And so, like, when I think about that letter that you just read about the cheerleader who just recently committed suicide, she talked about in her letter, like, this has been something I've been thinking about this since I was a teenager.
Right.
She didn't just recently woke up and said, you know what, today is the day.
Right. So it's a long thought process.
Mm-hmm. The impulse to end it all, however overpowering, does not last forever. So, sometimes it does take, those phone calls, and so, like she said, like, hey, like, they didn't check on, like, I was the strong one, and nobody checked in on me, and so sometimes it is the strong ones, where, nobody checks in on them because they are okay. Their life looks like it's okay. Social media look like it's okay. You know what I mean? And they're really not okay. So you have the ability to change someone's life. You have the ability to save someone's life. Sometimes it's just a conversation, we all on, social media, but, I was just recently just watching a TikTok video where this guy was talking about how there was this homeless guy. He talked about how he was addicted to heroin, and the guy who he was talking to in the video had been addicted to marijuana, but he's found Christ, and, all these things have happened to him in his life, and he's like on a better path. But he was like, if I would have never stopped and talked to that man, then I think that he would have seriously done something to himself at that moment. But so I really, I do feel that, we have the power, we have the ability to change someone's life, even if it's just one person, by having one conversation.
Right. So our presence is important.
Presence is important. Frequent checking in. I have people who fall on my mind that I haven't talked to in years. And even just recently, I was like, hey, I reached out to a college friend and I was like, hey, I hadn't heard from you in a while, and you have been on my mind, and she was like, I'm so happy you reached out because I needed somebody to talk to.
Right. Oh, wow. And Yes. What else did you have on myths and facts? You have anything?
Yeah, people who die by suicide are people who were unwilling to seek help. Sometimes you hear like, oh, they died, they didn't want help anyways. Studies of suicide victims have shown that more than half have sought medical help in the 6 months prior to the death.
Okay.
So it is prevalent that you do see individuals who are asking for help. Sometimes it's not on a consistent basis, and it can be very tricky, right? Because medication, when it comes to certain medications, sometimes you have to play around with medications to find the right fix, the right dosage. And so sometimes, individuals like, oh, it didn't work for me, I don't want to take it. And so that after over time, they're like, oh, okay, this medication didn't work and there's no use of me taking medication. So sometimes you have to find the right regimen for your body and for what works for you. And sometimes that can take time. And then sometimes you have individuals, right, that get on medication and it works well for them, And so you have, they're on their medication and they're doing great. And then the moment they come off of their medication, they're not doing good, right? So usually you do see an up and down, a wave of, ups and downs with individuals who do take medication because they're not constantly taking their medication on a regular basis. It's just like a person who gets sick, right? Have an upper respiratory infection, go get antibiotics, take antibiotics for 3 days. I'm feeling great. I don't need it no more, It's the same thing, so you have individuals who get medication, they may have been in a depressive state, may have had panic attacks, may have had issues, PTSD, whatever it was, right? And it worked for them. And then it gets off the medication because they're in a good space. And then once they're off their medication, then they're down again. So you may have that up and down way when it comes to individuals with medication or even therapy.
Right.
Talking about suicide may give someone the idea, you don't give a suicidal person the idea by talking about suicide. The opposite is true. Bringing up the subject of suicide and discussing it openly is one of the most helpful things that you can do. So talking about suicide, sometimes you can, sometimes you can be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I may affect them, I may trigger them, but it's okay to talk about suicide, but the thing is, when you do talk about suicide, you have to be prepare yourself for whatever it is that you may hear. Because you may hear some things that you don't want to hear, right? Because you may have an individual who honestly is telling you, I no longer want to be, I don't want to be here. And then how you take that information and how you process it and deal with that after you heard that is important. So I just say brace yourself if you are open to having this type of conversation. But if you find a loved one that you care about, a friend that you care about, something that you notice a drastic change in them, have a conversation with them. Hey, I've seen some changes with you. Like, what's going on? Like, let's talk. Like, because it could be just that conversation that they needed to help them get through whatever it is that they're going through.
Absolutely. Oh, so we didn't say this before, but if you have questions, you can put it in the comment section, or you can email Quintera Wright, or you can email the church. Quintera, again, tell us your email address.
My email is qwright@ccsgeorgia.org. That is QWRIGHT @CCS Georgia spelled out GEORGIA.org.
Okay, and you can email us at the church at njmbc1917@gmail.com. Again, y'all, we are here to answer any questions you might have on suicide or any other questions you might have on mental health in general. You're with the mental health educator. She can direct you in the right direction, give you the proper source that you would need to get you through what you're going through. And I think one thing, Quintera, we need to end this. One thing we need to see again, how important communication is. And we can't say that enough. Communication will be the key because if somebody had reached out to this young lady, we read the letter, she was dealing with the fact that they were going through COVID and her ACL, she tore her ACL, and even she fell in her classes. and she's a cheerleader. So evidently, she was on scholarship, and I'm just going on a limb. But most time, people who are like that are on some type of scholarship, and it could, and we all struggle, and we need to get to that point where let's communicate, let's check on our people. And one thing you made mention so clear to me was the fact that the person that you hadn't heard from in a while, you reached out to them, and from that you had a conversation that would soothe her soul, to put her in a position that she can rethink life again. So we need those. I know it's a candid conversation sometimes, but we need to have those conversations. So, hey, Quintera, there are some numbers you have given me, and I think I need to share them with our viewers on tonight, and then we will get out of here, because I know the time is well spent. There's so much we could go on. There's so much information. There's a crisis line that you can call if you are suffering and you think you're at a point of suicide. There's a number you can call if you want to talk to somebody. That's 1-800-273-8555. That's 800-273-TALK 8255. And if you're not the person who wants to talk, you can. There's a crisis text line as well. That you can text this number 741-741 is up on the screen now as we are speaking. You can text that number, and they will prompt, and you can text your problems, your feelings, how you are feeling, and someone will be there. And this is 24 hours hotline that you can call. Now, also, Trevor's Lifeline is another one, and it's really for the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to be honest with ourselves. There are some people who are actually struggling with their identity, and this is the line. This is where you can go. That number is 866-488-7386. And also, if you're that person again who don't want to actually talk to someone, you can text 678-678, put in the word start and send it, and then someone is prompted to talk to you or text you and coach you through whatever you're going through. So, Quintera, here's a reality. We've been dealing with a very sensitive subject on tonight, and I know it's a lot of information, and a lot of people saying that's a lot. But here we're going to end on a positive note on tonight. Quintera, I'm calling you Quintara. Hey, y'all, they are twins, by the way. Quintera, give us just a closing statement to help us, to encourage us. Again, get you some help. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, most definitely. Sometimes an individual can get themselves in a hole that sometimes they feel like they can't get out of. And so I encourage everybody, whether you're thinking about suicide or once considered it, or even you haven't, find 5 things that you have accomplished throughout that day or even the day previously. For some individuals, it's hard just to get out of bed, right? And so if you were able to get out of bed, that was an accomplishment. If you lost the appetite and you were able to eat, that's an accomplishment. So find 5 things, that you feel like you've done well. Oh, my hair looks great today. It's little. You may think that that's something little, but that's major. And those, 5 things a day, acknowledging 5 things a day that just help you pull yourself out of that pit is important. Like I said, there's some things that you can do, like journaling or finding a therapist, walking, spending 30 minutes outside per day, 15 in the morning, 15 in the evening. Sunlight is important and it helps us feel better, so those are just some small things that you can do. And we're so hard on ourselves. We all are, we're always trying to figure out ways of things we can do better, things that we did wrong, or areas that we made mistakes in. We're so hard on ourselves, and we have to learn to be kind to ourselves. And those are some points that I just want to put out there tonight.
That's heavy, girl. Thank you so much. Look, I want to end with this because many of you know I am a pastor, and the last couple of weeks we've been dealing with mental health awareness, and we got to also understand some of the things that we're facing are also spirits, they're demonic, and I want to encourage you by sharing this with you from 1 Peter 5:7, one of my favorite passages of scripture, by the way, as well. It says, casting all your cares upon him, for he careth for you. Know this, that God cares for you. He's concerned about where you are, what you're doing. He wants to be everything in your life to you. God has set it up where he has plans to prosper us and not to hurt us, to give us an expected end, to give us a bright future. Your future is bright because if you put it in the Lord's hand, he will show you the way. And I'm just convinced, y'all, that we are at this stage where, Quintera, I have to constantly pray for my children, that the blood of Jesus will be cover them as they go to their various, as Justin get ready to go back to Mississippi State, as Mary graduate and go to the University of Southern Mississippi, go Golden Eagles, and just, Lord, cover my children. Mary is getting ready to go to unmarked territory. Justin has been there. He's knows what's going on. So I'm constantly saying, cover my children, because we don't know what transpires when they get to these schools and things. So I'm like, cast your care on the Lord, y'all, because he cares for you. And that's all we have tonight. And I'm just grateful for this platform again. Quintera, thank you so much. You have been so much help to the body of Christ, because we are dealing with a issue that we know, again, there's an elephant in the room, but we're going to have to deal with it. So until next week, if it be the Lord's will, we'll see you next week. I'm Timothy Wright.
I'm Quintera Wright.
She's on it, y'all. We will see you next week. Get you some good rest, and may God bless you richly. Good night.
Good night.